The Dow down after Trump's comments on global trade. This as the CEO of one of the biggest doll and toy manufacturers, Mattel, says prices will go up. We also have some scary new audio from air traffic control tower at Newark Airport as they lost all communications and radar. And more problems plaguing one of the nation's busiest airports as the Real ID requirement is set to go into effect. Plus,
oh, yeah, it needs a lot of work. All the cells bolts alone are rusted completely through.
it does need a lot of work, and I'll give you an inside look at the conditions inside Alcatraz after Trump says he wants to reopen the prison. But first, we're watching Wall Street one day before the Federal Reserve's rate decision and as investors react to President Donald Trump's latest commentary on global trade deals. So the Dow, it is down nearly 1%. And let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map brought to you by FinViz. It's showing the top 500 stocks, a lot of red on the board after Trump talked trade during the sit down with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. And he said, quote, "We don't have to sign deals." Let's take a listen.
Because everyone says, when are you going to sign deals? We don't have to sign deals. We could sign 25 deals right now, Howard, if we wanted. We don't have to sign deals. They have to sign deals with us. They want a piece of our market. We don't want a piece of their market. We don't care about their market. They want a piece of our market. So we can just sit down, and I'll do this at some point over the next 2 weeks, and I'll sit with Howard and Scott and with our great vice president who has done a really good job. We have some good news to report on a lot of fronts. But JD will be there and Marco, and we're going to sit down and we're going to put very fair numbers down. And we're going to say, here's what this country, what we want. And congratulations, we have a deal. And they'll either say, great, and they'll start shopping, or they'll say, not good, we're not going to do it. And I said, that's okay, you don't have to shop. Now, we may think, well, they have a right, that maybe we were a little bit wrong, so we'll adjust it. And then you people will say, oh, it's so chaotic. No, we're flexible.
CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joining us now. So, Kelly, certainly a lot to digest here for investors. Why don't you walk us through what happened with the markets today?
Yeah, Jules, definitely a lot to digest there. I don't think investors love the word flexible. I think they want to see some trade deals, but we ended in the red across all the major indexes, and this is the second down day in the red for the Dow. Of course, we had a pretty long winning streak there for a while on Wall Street after all of that volatility. But in general, the folks that I'm talking to are saying, look, we want to see some very clear, tangible progress on these trade deals. That's why you're not seeing things fall off a cliff like we did a few of those days in April, but just kind of some tepid pessimism. The other thing that I want to note is that we have the Federal Reserve interest rate decision tomorrow. The Fed did start meeting today. It's a 2-day meeting in D.C., and we're likely going to get an interest rate pause. That is not that's not unexpected. We have seen the Fed hold interest rates steady for the past couple of meetings now, but really what investors are going to be looking for is the Fed's outlook on inflation and the tightrope that they are walking with economic growth. That's really where you should be looking at the markets tomorrow. I always love to throw up the Dow while Powell is speaking because markets move one way or another. So some of the pessimism that you're seeing today, Jules, reflected in the markets is investors looking ahead tomorrow and wondering, are we still going to get interest rate cuts at all this year?
All right, let's talk about Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He also talked trade deals today. So what did we hear from him?
I think the biggest piece of news by far was the fact that he confirmed no current negotiations when it comes to a trade deal are happening with China. Remember, we have had a lot of mixed messaging from the White House as well as the Chinese Commerce Ministry. The fact that Bessent confirmed today that there is no ongoing trade negotiation, that there is a possibility for that to happen, but no active talks, certainly did not help investor, business, or consumer sentiment. He did highlight that there are over 10 countries that they are negotiating with right now, but of course China's really the big one when it comes to that 145% tariff, and it just being one of our biggest trading partners, Jules.
And we've said all along, Trump says that tariffs will bring manufacturing back to the United States, but the headline today, the CEO of Mattel says when it comes to toys, toys. He just does not see that happening. So let's take a listen to what he had to say.
But if the tariffs come and they stay, would it be cheaper to manufacture toys in the United States?
We don't see that happening. We believe that production in other countries where we can be efficient and more productive is the best balance between manufacturing in international outside of the U.S. and continue to develop product in terms of design and creativity in America.
So, Kelly, is this a message that we're hearing from other companies as well?
It is. And you see, by the way, Apple, another big manufacturer that has a lot of their business in China, saying that they're going to move towards India. Now, Mattel specifically, they aren't as exposed to some of the other toy companies or electronics companies or retailers that we've been talking about. Less than 40% of their business comes from China in terms of the product manufacturing. They've really worked hard to lessen their reliance on that country. But we are hearing from so many different retailers. And in fact, Jules, I was actually at a toy store yesterday, and we were talking about this specific thing that so many of our toys, 80%, are manufactured in China. And so you are seeing this concern amongst businesses that, well, we're not really set up infrastructure-wise here, and that would take a really long time, a lot of money to invest in getting that ramped up. But they are looking at other countries like India, like Indonesia, Thailand, where you're still going to get that quality, but also that price. The other thing, by the way, Jules, I will highlight in that same interview I watched with the Mattel CEO, he did say that we can expect higher prices for consumers.
You were listening to every single word that he had to say and kind of reading into the message there. All right, Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, thank you so much. All right, onto the White House now. As we mentioned, President Trump met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney this afternoon. This comes as talks about making Canada the 51st state have strained relationships with our neighbor to the north. Prime Minister Carney pushed back against the suggestion during the meeting.
There are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale.
So CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro is live outside the White House. Hi, Aaron. So along with talk about Canada being the 51st state, what were the other key takeaways from this meeting?
Jules, good to be with you. Yeah, that exchange on the U.S. annexing Canada, as President Trump has floated, was certainly notable. As President Trump said, never say never in response to Prime Minister Carney. And we just heard from Prime Minister Carney in a press conference as well, where he remained clear and said that he asked President Trump to stop referring to Canada as the 51st state. He did not share President Trump's answer. And he talked a little bit about his body language, what was going through his mind as President Trump was talking about tariffs, Canada as the 51st state. Take a listen to what Prime Minister Carney said during that press conference.
I'm glad that you couldn't tell what was going through my mind as that was going through. Look, with respect to the first point, the president has made known his wish about that issue for some time. I've been careful always to distinguish between wish and reality. I was clear there in the Oval Office, as I've been clear throughout on behalf of Canadians, that this is never going to happen. Canada is not for sale. It never will be for sale. Some things, as I said in the room, some things are never for sale. And he agreed with that.
Now, Prime Minister Carney himself acknowledged that this is just the first step in the relationship between himself, and he was just elected in late April, and the second term of President Trump. He said that there would be more negotiations, seemed to indicate that this was just the first step when it comes to potential trade deal, the economic relationship between the U.S. and Canada, though he repeated his stance that the U.S. tariff, Prime Minister Carney believes, hurts the competitiveness of American companies, hurts manufacturers, and the job numbers, particularly when it comes to the auto industry. That was something that the two men discussed. But at the same time, Prime Minister Carney indicated that Canada will continue to focus to, quote, build at home following the discussions today. which is another sign of his rhetoric that Canada can't necessarily rely on the United States as an ally or partner as much as they used to, though the conversation from what we saw in front of cameras was pretty amicable.
Aaron, President Trump also announced today he would call off further airstrikes against the Houthis in Yemen. So what do we know?
Yeah, we're still waiting on further details, but from what we know so far, Oman's foreign minister posted on X kind of suggesting that Oman played a role in mediating a ceasefire between the U.S. and the Houthis when it comes to strikes in that Red Sea trading lanes. That's a crucial area for shipping in the Middle East that has been the crux of a lot of the missile strikes between the two countries. Oman's foreign minister wrote, quote, "In the future, neither side will target the other, including American vessels in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait." White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded to that, saying the ceasefire is, quote, "a massive win," and as President Trump, quote, "following through on the promise to restore the freedom of navigation in the Red Sea." We're still waiting to hear official comment from the Houthis in Yemen, but certainly President Trump made some news there by saying a ceasefire was reached. The senior official at the White House told CBS News that this came after a morning meeting with National Security Council officials.
Aaron Navarro. Aaron, thank you. The Trump administration allowed to begin enforcing a ban on transgender troops in the military, at least for now. We have details on the controversial policy playing out in the Supreme Court next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. This just in, the Supreme Court allowing the Trump administration to enforce a ban on transgender military service members while legal challenges proceed. The court's 3 liberal justices say they would have kept a policy on hold. It stems from an executive order claiming transgender service members are harmful to military readiness. Transgender troops say the ban is discriminatory. Our monitors now take us to Newark Airport, where an equipment failure caused air traffic control screens to go dark for up to 90 seconds. Multiple air traffic controllers are now on trauma leave following the incident. At the White House, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy talked about the system in use right now. Let's take a listen.
Sean Duffy here. Obviously, there's a lot of coverage right now about what's happening in Newark in the airspace. Want to just talk about a couple things as background. So the air traffic control system that we use today is anywhere from 25 to 50 years old. We have copper wires, not fiber. We use radar that is, 1983 vintage at the earliest. A lot of it's 1970s, some of it even earlier than that. Radios also incredibly antiquated. And so this is not a new problem. We've known this problem has existed. There's been multiple GAO reports over the last 4 years saying you have real problems with air traffic control, and you should do something with it before it actually fails.
CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve joining us live from LAX in Los Angeles right now. So, Chris, thanks for being here, especially from the airport. The backdrop looks pretty empty right now. Good thing for travelers. But what do we know about the air traffic control system failure and also its impact at Newark Airport?
Well, it's a profound impact at Newark Airport. You have seen more than 800 flight cancellations, inching up towards 900, thousands of flights delayed. You're looking at the flights leaving LA for San Francisco. Many of them are 2.5 hours or more delayed yet again today, and there doesn't really appear to be an end in sight. United has put a change waiver up for flyers through the end of next week, and that might be optimistic, as these controllers can be out for up to 45 days under this trauma leave policy. We also are getting a look at sort of the moments when this was starting to happen from some air traffic control audio. Take a listen to this.
United 2343, I am going to move you here because I just got told that the approach lost all their radars. 3 of their 4 radar screens went black, and they have no frequencies.
All right, we're ready to move, 2343.
And you can hear it there from the controller in the Newark Tower, just how concerning that situation was. The idea that one of their air traffic control tracking centers could just sort of freeze up, could lose the ability to track traffic. And we understand it was not a long outage. We're hearing that the issues there lasted somewhere between 30 and 90 seconds, but it was enough, certainly, for the controllers in that center to decide this was a breaking point kind of moment.
So, Chris, Secretary Duffy talked about how airport technology is old, it's outdated. So talk about what the major airline CEOs are saying about this. What did he say?
Well, there's a lot of concern from the airlines about what this means, not only at Newark, but across the system, as they want to be able to run reliably. And you can't run an airline reliably if air traffic control stops being able to track planes, and suddenly, the nation's 12th busiest airport, or fill in a different one, suddenly can handle about 30% of the volume it normally could. We talked with Alaska Airlines CEO Ben Minicucci about this yesterday. Take a listen.
Do you worry about the safety of Newark or the safety of the air traffic control system in general?
I believe our industry is safe. I think, it's been proven over and over again, this is one of the safest modes of transportation. The area we have to focus on is air traffic control. Like I said, I think if you get staffing addressed, infrastructure is a big deal. We have old equipment and infrastructure at a lot of towers that needs to be updated and modernized. And I think there's a huge opportunity with technology.
So you have concern from the airlines about what this means, not only at Newark, but the New York airspace is the busiest, most complicated in the country, and it appears that one of those 3 New York City area airports has been essentially brought to a crawl because, at least in part, a copper wire failed at a facility in Philadelphia. That tells you sort of the state of the air traffic control system, the point the Secretary is making.
Chris Van Cleve. Chris, thank you so much. Well, the deadline to get your real ID is now just 1 day away. So starting tomorrow, TSA will ask for a real ID if you want to fly here in the United States. And it looks like a lot of you still haven't made the change. CBS News New York's Christina Fan has more.
Good morning. If you're thinking about running to this Motor Vehicle Commission office for a last-minute appointment today, you're going to have to think again. We scoured the state's website for the next available real ID time slot and didn't find one until the month of July. And that is bad news, considering the fact that New Jersey currently has the lowest rate of real ID compliance in the country at just 17%. CBS News data shows that dozens of other states are also behind on compliance ahead of Wednesday's deadline. Travelers are required to switch over to Real ID or use an enhanced form of identification like a passport if they want to travel by plane domestically beginning tomorrow. The New Jersey MVC says it will be offering some emergency slots for those who need to board domestic flights within 14 days for life or death reasons or for urgent travel plans. But those appointments will only be available at their Trenton location, and there are no guarantees. Now, if you show up to the airport tomorrow without a valid ID, the Department of Homeland Security says to expect delays, additional screening, and also the chance that you may not be allowed to board your flight. Reporting from North Bergen in New Jersey, Christina Fan, CBS News, New York.
Columbia University is ending funding for nearly 180 researchers. Columbia leadership cited the financial strain of funding those who were impacted by the Trump administration's cuts to federal grant funding. About 20% of employees funded at least partially by terminated grants will be let go. The Trump administration is also cutting off all new federal research grants to Harvard. So Education Secretary Linda McMahon accused Harvard of ignoring anti-Semitism, engaging in discrimination, abandoning any semblance of academic rigor, and disastrous management. So she says Harvard isn't eligible for grants until it meets the administration's demands. Harvard says the demands would impose unprecedented and improper control over the university. Harvard says it will comply with the law, respect viewpoint diversity, and fight anti-Semitism, but it will also defend against, quote, illegal government overreach. A Texas teen fighting for his life after playing a controversial game called Senior Assassin. The warning out to parents next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. The Trump administration wants a federal district court to dismiss a lawsuit challenging the FDA for expanding access to an abortion pill. CBS Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga joining us live now. Nicole, thanks for being here. Let's talk about what the administration's argument is to throw out the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be with you. The Trump administration really pushing forward here in defending U.S. rules that are easing access to the abortion drug mifepristone from a legal challenge that actually began back during the Biden administration. This is actually a rare instance in which the Trump administration is pursuing a request that was initially made by the Biden administration last year. But this is really an argument about jurisdiction. It's about location, not the merits of this case. In other words, lawyers for the Department of Justice arguing the U.S. District Court in Amarillo, Texas is not the right venue for these three Republican states that are pursuing the lawsuit, Missouri, Idaho, and Kansas. And to remind our viewers about what this case really centers on here, it's the legal battle over mifepristone. And it began in November of 2022 when a coalition of anti-abortion rights doctors and medical associations really tried to roll back a series of changes that were made by the FDA that relaxed rules around the drug. Those changes included allowing mifepristone to be taken up to 10 weeks into a pregnancy rather than just 7 weeks, really expanding healthcare provider options who can provide and prescribe the drug.
So where will this case likely go from here?
Yeah, we'll see what the court ultimately decides. The next step will be for Judge Matthew Kaczmarek to decide whether to dismiss it outright or to allow it to proceed. If the lawsuit proceeds and succeeds in the Northern District of Texas, stakes are really high. Abortion pills now account for nearly 2/3 of pregnancy terminations. Now, Missouri, Idaho, and Kansas, for their part, have argued that they have standing to sue because their Medicaid health insurance programs are likely to have to pay to treat patients who have suffered some complications from using mifepristone. They've also said that they should be allowed to remain in Texas because it would be inefficient, really take a lot of time to send this case to another court after this 2-year legal battle that has played out.
Nicole Skanga. Nicole, thank you. A North Texas high school senior is fighting for his life. CBS News Texas reporter J.D. Miles reports he was hurt while playing a popular and controversial game called Senior Assassin.
Armed with water guns and chasing classmates through an Arlington neighborhood, Isaac Leal jumps onto the back of a Jeep that starts to pull out of a driveway. The aggressive water gun chase game called Senior Assassin is what Isaac's father says his son was playing with friends 2 weeks ago.
And everybody that's playing has to download that app so that way they could tell you what location each person is at.
Only minutes after the vehicle pulls away with the 17-year-old standing on the back bumper, he would be on the ground with a severe head injury. The South Grand Prairie High School baseball star, who was only weeks away from graduation, now on life support at Medical City, Arlington.
Like everything was planned out. Your plans change from overnight. Nothing matters but saving your kid's life.
Videos from security cameras show Isaac standing on the back bumper of the Jeep as it made several turns before a dip in the road ejected him onto the pavement.
It was literally 6 turns that ended up being 5 minutes. So that's 5 minutes of him holding on to his life.
Only an ambulance responded to the scene, which upset the parents who want a criminal investigation by police. In a statement to CBS News Texas, the Arlington Police Department says paramedics were sent for what was described as an unconscious person. PD, however, was never dispatched, and we were not notified that Mr. Leal's injuries stem from a traffic incident until we spoke with his family this past weekend.
I understand accidents happen, but this was not an accident.
The family says it's having trouble moving Isaac to another hospital. In a statement, Medical City Arlington tells us transfers are dependent on the patient's condition, whether they are stable enough to be transferred, as well as the receiving hospital's capacity and willingness to accept the patient.
We're going to keep fighting for my son. I don't know how to make it clear.
Isaac's family has kept a constant vigil by his side since the accident, holding out hope that he will somehow recover.
but they wanted to speak out to hopefully spare other parents from the same pain they are going through.
We feel like people need to be aware of games like this, because teenagers, as a teenager, you're not aware of, if something bad's going to happen.
The Senior Assassin game has become an unofficial tradition among students across the country. Most of the controversy surrounds the use of water guns, which have been mistaken for real firearms. It's prompted South Grand Prairie High's principal to warn the senior class that students who engage in this activity on or around school grounds may face disciplinary action, including the loss of senior privileges. The principal at nearby Timberview High is threatening 3 days in-school suspension for students caught playing the game on campus.
That was CBS News Texas' J.D. Miles reporting. Authorities in Southwest Florida are investigating a tragic bear attack that resulted in the death of an elderly man and his dog. Officials say 89-year-old Robert Markle and his dog were found dead at a home in a rural area east of Naples yesterday morning. The gruesome discovery came after the man's daughter reported them missing. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission is now conducting DNA testing to determine if a bear they captured in the area last night was the one responsible for the attack.
We had a plan in place for this. We have drones, man and women power on the ground. We had approximately 10 officers on scene securing the perimeter. They're armed with bear aversion guns and lethal force if needed. That's obviously the last resort. But our number one issue that we wanted to address was the public safety.
Florida is home to more than 4,000 black bears. The incident marks the first fatal bear attack on a human in the state since record keeping began. Jumping the map now to Southern California, an update on the small boat that capsized off the coast of San Diego County. The Coast Guard says they have suspended the search for 7 people reported missing. 3 people died and 4 others were injured when their boat flipped yesterday. Authorities believe the boat was being used to smuggle migrants into the United States. And staying in California, police in Los Angeles identified the man accused of crashing the front gate outside Jennifer Aniston's home. Police say 48-year-old Jimmy Wayne Carwile has been arrested for felony vandalism. Aniston was home at the time of the incident. So far, no word on what led up to the crash. On to Texas, where the body of 10-year-old Dava Woods was recovered. Dava was swept away by floodwaters after walking home from her school bus in Brenham, Texas. Last night, her body was recovered after a multi-agency search. The Brenham Fire Department said that its hearts are with Dava's family and asked the community to keep them in their prayers. Dava's mother, Veronica Williams, was present at a press conference to give updates on the recovery today. A lieutenant with the Texas Department of Public Safety also extended his condolences to her. Let's take a listen.
We have taken care of her as much as we could. Our hearts go out to Wilson's family. It is a difficult thing.
The City of Brenham Communications Manager Melinda Gordon also comforted Dava's mother during the press conference. Support services will be available for students at the school that the girl attended. All right, in other parts of Texas, this lightning strike sparked a house fire. This is in Colleyville, north of Fort Worth. We've learned 3 people were taken to the hospital with minor injuries. Meteorologist Zoe Mintz is tracking tornado warnings across the Northeast. Joining me in studio now to talk about them.
And there's now a tornado warning down in Texas, as there's kind of 2 bullseyes that we're looking at. One that's up across the Northeast near Pennsylvania, New York City, and then another one that's down near Texas. Let's show you the one down near Texas first if we can, and then I'm going to show you the tornado warnings that are in place. That orange area, that is that level 3 out of 5 risk for severe weather. And that's where we currently have a tornado watch in effect. And there is now also a tornado warning in effect for Louisiana, that area in red up there, but also not just this area that has widespread risk for tornadoes. It's also up near Pennsylvania and heading towards New York and New Jersey. This line of strong to severe thunderstorms has tornadic activity. Right now, I don't know if it's confirmed tornadoes, but so far 3 tornado warnings are in place. And make sure you call your friends and family that are in these areas, as they're going to be dealing with some nasty weather over the next couple of hours, as 2 storm systems are on either end of this area of high pressure. It's what we know is an omega block that's setting up. So days of very rainy and very active weather has been in place. And again, the east side and the west side of this high pressure system. It's bringing that severe weather potential, but luckily it is not bringing as much rainfall across the Northeast. Places that have already seen upwards of 6 to 7 inches across the Northeast. Let's bring up those numbers because, yeah, you can see up across New England, there have been some very, very high rainfall totals over the past 48 hours. 6 to 7 inches. These rainfall totals might be seeing an additional 3 to 4 inches as well. But we are going to continue to see that low pressure system spinning off and away from the Northeast, while all of the eyes will be on Louisiana and the deep south, where we are going to be seeing the potential of very, very heavy rainfall for them. It's going to be upwards of 4 to 6 inches of rain, which is why there is that bullseye when it comes to that excessive rainfall risk. So flash flooding is going to be a huge concern this afternoon, evening, and into the overnight hours. Luckily, the system will have blown by tomorrow afternoon, so there is some good news. But like we talked about earlier, Jules, that little girl, it only takes about 6 inches of rushing water to wipe you off your feet. It only takes about a foot of water to pick up your car and blow it down, whatever stream is flowing. So just another reason, turn around, don't drown. Don't play in the ditches or the canals that are normally dry, because this time of year, flash flooding, it's a huge concern. And flooding is actually the #1 cause of deaths in severe weather.
Boy,
So
good reminder, and just stay inside and stay safe.
Yes.
All right, Zoe, thank you. Jury deliberations underway right now in the trial of 3 former Memphis police officers in the beating death of Tyree Nichols. We'll have a live report next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. We go to Tennessee now, where jury deliberations begin in the trial of 3 former Memphis police officers charged in the death of Tyree Nichols. Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith face second-degree murder charges in state court. Tyree Nichols died in a hospital after he was beaten by officers following a traffic stop. CBS News correspondent Omar Villafranca joining us live now to tell us about the latest. Omar.
Well, the jury has now had the case for a little bit over 3 hours. They started deliberations today. We had the closing arguments made by the defense attorneys yesterday and today, and then the prosecution actually kind of got to rebut that, and then they sent them off to the jury room. As you mentioned, they're facing several charges. Bean, Haley, and Smith are 7 counts, the top being second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, all the way down to official misconduct and official oppression. So a lot of eyes are on this case. Keep in mind there's already been a federal case where people have pled guilty or been found guilty on that side. But now this is the state case that's going on, and there's a lot of eyes on it.
Yeah, and this is a unique situation with the jury, so talk to us about where they are all from.
Well, this happened in Memphis, Shelby County, right by the border of Arkansas. Well, they had to find a jury, hopefully, that they were looking for that was impartial. So they had to go 300-plus miles away to the other side of the state in Chattanooga. And so this jury has been picked from Hamilton County over there by Chattanooga, and they're having to deliberate a case here in Memphis. Now, when this happened, obviously, it was national news. So these folks have been here, obviously, for day 8 of this trial, and they're trying to push through this. Eventually, they would like to go home after doing their civic duty. But that's what makes this interesting, but also that there's been a federal trial already, and the sentencing for the federal trial has not happened yet, pending the outcome of this trial. So, again, we'll have to see what the jury decides.
Omar Villafranca. Omar, thank you. It is day 2 of jury selection in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs in New York. The judge plans to bring in 50 prospective jurors every day until a jury of 12 people and 6 alternates are selected. Prospective jurors are being asked questions such as whether they have been the victim of a crime or have feelings concerning violence and sexual assault. Opening statements are expected to start next week. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments about two high-profile cases involving international students that the Trump administration wants to deport. The Justice Department appealed a judge's order requiring Rumeyah Ozturk's case to be moved to a detention center in Vermont. It is also appealing a ruling Mohsen Madawi's release on bail. So the three judges on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals panel are Judge Barrington Parker, a Clinton appointee, and Judges Susan Carney and Allison Nathan, both Obama appointees. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman has details on the hearing.
A panel of judges in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments today over the cases of Tufts student Rumeyah Ozturk and Columbia student Mohsen Madawi. One thing that the government is trying to do is consolidate the cases of these two students. Mohsen Madawi's lawyers pushed back against this, saying that there are different issues at play here. Importantly, Rumeyah Ozturk is still being held at a detention center in Louisiana, whereas Mohsen Madawi has been released. The government is also arguing to re-detain Mohsen Madawi. They say that he should not be eligible for bail and that it's causing irreparable harm to the government to have him out. They said it would also cause irreparable harm for them to have to set up remote proceedings for him because he still has immigration court that will proceed in Louisiana. His attorney said that they could take care of that and that they believe that both his First and Fifth Amendment rights are being violated, and that re-detaining him would chill both his speech and that of others, harming the public. When it comes to Rumeyah Ozturk, there was a lot of discussion today over where she was when her lawyer's habeas petition was filed. That's the petition for her release, because what's at issue here is that a district court judge has ordered that she should be returned to Vermont. Apparently, Rumeyah Ozturk was still in transit when that petition was filed, but the government argues that the rightful place for this to be heard is in Louisiana. The judges today did not release a decision yet, but we expect there could be one as early as today. Back to you.
Trump has big plans to reopen Alcatraz, but it's easier said than done. I'll give you a look inside the famous prison next. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. A live look at Vatican City, where cardinals have one day left to prepare until they make their choice for the next pope. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay is in Rome and walks us through the process.
Well, any one of the 133 cardinal electors could be the next pope. They're all here in Rome preparing to enter the conclave tomorrow. They're from all parts of the world, making the most consequential decision of their life inside of the Sistine Chapel, surrounded by frescoes by Michelangelo, including the Last Judgment. And this is indeed a very important judgment call on their part. Who will lead the 1.4 billion Catholics around the world? We're seeing the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's in the run-up. We've seen the support staff of the Vatican being sworn into secrecy. These are the cooks and the cleaners who will be helping those cardinals during the conclave. And if they break this vow of secrecy, they can be excommunicated immediately. Tomorrow, the cardinals will take their own vow as they go into the Sistine Chapel. Typically, in most recent papacies, these decisions have been made in just the first 2 or 3 days. Now, so long as the voting is ongoing, we'll see plumes of black smoke come out of that chimney over the Sistine Chapel. But once they reach a 2/3 majority, white smoke will appear. We'll hear the words, Habemus Papam, we have a pope. Back to you.
Let's bring up our TikTok tube now. Our CBS News social team is following a story out of southeast Louisiana. Crews working to contain a major oil spill, and so far, more than 70,000 gallons of oil have been recovered. Take a look.
There's a pretty big oil spill happening right now off the coast of Louisiana at an 82-year-old well. One witness described seeing a 30 to 40 foot high geyser of oil. It was first reported on April 26 when an offshore well blew out. They said it was finally under control on May 4th, but they also said that getting it under control marks only the beginning of our work. According to the latest press release from the Coast Guard, they still don't know exactly how much oil came out during the spill, but they have recovered nearly 71,000 gallons of oily water mixture. A report was also filed with the Coast Guard's National Response Center, and that said the amount discharged could potentially reach the threshold of a major spill for coastal waters, 100,000 gallons of oil. That report was made publicly available by the nonprofit watchdog group SkyTruth, which uses satellite images to monitor environmental hazards worldwide. This spill is part of a bigger infrastructure issue when it comes to oil: orphaned and aging wells. There are millions of abandoned oil wells across the U.S., and the majority haven't been plugged or permanently closed to prevent future pollution. This one happened at well number 59 near Garden Island Bay, which, according to state records, was completed on Christmas Eve in 1942. This well was not abandoned, but according to the Coast Guard, it hadn't had measurable oil pressure since the 90s. State records show it's also been shut in since 2015, which means that oil production stopped but could be resumed at a later time. It's still unclear how that capping came undone to cause the spill. The 2021 bipartisan infrastructure law allocated $4.7 billion to cap orphan wells nationwide. Louisiana has so far been able to plug about 500 wells with the money it's received. But there are more than 4,000 other wells that still need to be capped, according to the state, potentially leaving many more wells vulnerable to spills just like the one happening now. The extent of the damage isn't known just yet, but federal maps online show that pollutants have drifted into a protected area for endangered sea turtles. The cause of the incident is still under investigation. Follow CBS News to get the latest.
Our social team has so much great content like this, so follow us at the handle CBS News. President Trump says he wants to reopen Alcatraz to house America's most violent offenders. The prison, located in the San Francisco Bay, closed in 1963. Experts say reopening the prison would cost millions of dollars. I took a ferry to Alcatraz Island to get an inside look at the conditions. Here they are. So after a 15-minute ferry ride from Pier 33, we arrived at the Rock. Alcatraz officially closed 60 years ago for two reasons: its crumbling infrastructure and its high maintenance costs. This sign here is right when you get off the ferry, and it's a reminder of the native takeover of Alcatraz. I've been here before for a tour. I've been here with my kids when their school has taken tours. I never thought that this would have ever been considered a high security prison ever again. There's two main issues right now that stand in the way: water and sewage. Those are two things that would have to be taken care of immediately. Also, it's dilapidated buildings, crumbling infrastructure, and certainly the maintenance costs are going to be extraordinary. Here are the showers. This obviously housed someone at one point, cell number 127. You can see inside the toilet, there's a place to sleep and a little table, maybe for writing or journaling or reading. And that's basically what all of the cells look like as you go down the aisle. At this point, it's still open to tours. America Decides is next. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia's three-day truce is a, quote, theatrical performance. Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar speaks to our own Major Garrett on her thoughts on the war and much more. That's on America Decides. We leave you now with a live look at LAX. Heads up for travelers starting tomorrow. Real ID enforcement begins at airports nationwide. You are watching CBS News 24/7. America Decides, up next.